let's have a look at Logic then. The icon is here on the dock. A single click will launch it. And to start with, I'm going to create a new empty project. So before we can do anything in Logic, we need to choose the type of channel that we're going to be working with, at least to get started. There are 3 types of channels that we can work with in Logic, and they are by default defined by these 3 colors. So the first one is a software instrument. If you have read, used, or worked with any other DAW, maybe Ableton or Cubase, for example, this will be the equivalent of your VST. So a software instrument, these are MIDI controlled instruments that you can manipulate using controllers. So we have the option to choose which instrument we want to work with, although we can choose this after creating the channel. We can go empty channel strip to give us a completely neutral channel. And the output that these sounds will be pointed towards is our default output, which is 1 and 2. 1 being left, 2 being right. So the second type of channel is audio. Now at the moment, this is defined as 2 types of channels. So the first type of audio channel, it says to record using a microphone or line input. So as it says, this is for if you were to plug a microphone in and you wanted to record anything from percussion through to your voice, to an instrument. Alternatively, a line input, so something coming out of a synthesizer, for example. So a jack cable coming out of a synthesizer. Either of those 2 types of recordings can then come through onto this type of channel. Additionally, this is the type of channel that you would be able to use for dragging audio samples that you may have bought or downloaded or created onto and into the project so that you can then edit and manipulate them. So if you are recording an external input, say a microphone, you will be running through an interface and the input number will show up here. So at the moment I'm not, so I'm going to say this channel has no input. Its output is the same, 1 and 2, left and right speaker. Now the second type of audio channel, ever so slightly different, and now this is for plugging a guitar or a bass directly into Logic and not using, say for example, your amplifier or your effects pedals. What you might want to do is to be able to monitor your guitar as you play and add effects to it, or an amp simulation, so that it sounds more like what it will do at the end of your project. Now obviously for you to hear that, we need to have this option here, which is I want to hear my instrument as I play and record, which is basically a simplified version of saying input monitoring. I am going to monitor or listen to what I am inputting. Now these options will change slightly when we add the advanced tools, but it's nice that they're defined like this at the moment. So the third type of channel being a virtual drummer. And this is a blend between MIDI and audio. You can choose this style of drummer, and then we can further define this layer. So I'm just going to come back to my software instrument. I am going to load a default channel and I'm just going to hit create. So we can see here the instrument or the software instrument channel has been created here. And this is its track header. Now again, before we go any further, it's going to come up to Logic, Preferences, and I'm going to come to Advanced Tools. So we have two options here. Show advanced tools, which you can see instantly adds a whole range of extra tools to the screen. And also further options for activating the advanced tools. So audio, surround, MIDI, control surfaces, score, and advanced editing. Turn them all on. And then we can close this window. So some of the sections may now look a little bit daunting, but we'll run through all of this now. So across the top, we have our transport bar. So all of these symbols are going to be familiar. Rewind, fast forward, stop, play, record. And now this is cycle. Cycle being the part of the track or the project that you are going to rotate around or loop. In Logic, it's called cycle. We've got our position of where we are in the track, our tempo and our key signature, and time signature. We also have some different controls here, for example, metronome. And on the left hand side of the transport bar, we have some, this is more visual. So the eye is on already. It's the inspector. This removes the whole of the left panel. So the inspector shows us detailed information about the channel that we have selected. The library, which is this first button. These are preset instruments and effects chains for if you're unsure of what instrument to choose. We can have the help button, which basically anything that you hover over, it will give you a description. Again, this is really useful. We have the toolbar. Now these are some additional kind of shortcuts that you might want to use. You might not use all the time, but you can customize what's here and what is displayed. Smart controls. Now when we add some more instruments and plugins, this will actually start to take on some features that you will be able to manipulate. The mixer, which looks very simple at the moment, and the piano roll. The piano roll being where we will edit our MIDI. This section, this is the track header. This is basically where we were going to organize all of our sounds from top to bottom. This section here is our arrangement window. This is where we are going to build our arrangement. So as we add more instruments, more channels, this is going to start to then populate, and it's important that we keep on top of this. So for example, I am going to add an instrument. I'm going to add a piano. So vintage electric piano. Okay. I'm going to double click and label this piano. Now when I go to my mixer, it's labeled. It's green, we know it's a software instrument channel. Okay. Now I'm going to add another channel just so we can see a little bit of the difference here. Now as we've turned the advanced tools on, this dialog has given us a few more options and made it a little bit more simple with less pictures. So the software instrument is the same. It's now given us external MIDI, which will allow us to transmit or receive MIDI signals to synthesizers that are external. Here is our audio. There is our guitar or bass, and you can see now the input monitoring, it has been relabeled. And here's our drummer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add an audio channel so we can see how this is different. And I'm just going to label it sample. And the third type, as mentioned before, was the drummer. I'm going to add this. I'm going to change it to hip hop. I'm going to press create. So this is the only type of channel that actually populates you straight away. It's giving us a little drum pattern. It's giving us a drum machine with some processes, and is giving us a way that we can manipulate the drum pattern. So very quickly, we have an XY grid. So we can move this dot. As we move it, the pattern will actually change. So if we make it loud and simple, you can see that there is less there. If I make it loud and complex, it's added more. If I go simple and soft, it's actually going to be playing the part smaller. So you can see how this actually starts to look like audio, even though it isn't. I'm just going to add a region. So I'm going to control click, create empty MIDI region, green. I'm going to come over to my loops. And I'm just going to pull in, here we go, 70s piano. And we can see that that is blue. So straight away we have some definition here. Yellow is our virtual drummer, blue is anything that is audio, and green will be MIDI. So as I have opened the loop section on the right, anything that's green is MIDI, anything that's blue is audio. Now these are all loops that have come as part of Logic. You can define them by using the filters. So we could say, let's just have all pianos. We could then go to genre and say, I only want funk pianos, and it will filter the list down. So by selecting the channel in the track head, you can see that the inspector changes down on the left hand side, and the information on the bottom of the screen also changes because we have this editing window open. So when we are on MIDI, it shows us a piano roll. When we are on audio, it shows us our audio editing window. And when we're on our drummer, it shows us our XY grid and filtering of drum sounds. If we go to the notes section, this is a really useful area to add any detail to your project. This could be little reminders. It could be notes about the process you've gone through. I personally use it to leave me a list of things that I want to do on a track, or if I'm collaborating with someone, to write down what it is that I've done or what it is that I would like to be changed in the project. So finally, if we just go File, Save As, and remember that everything in Logic will be saved by default in the music folder and then into the Logic folder. So for every project, create a new folder, give it a name, and then give it a name. Okay, so that you know exactly where everything is. We have two ways of organizing this. Now, the first one is a folder, and this is what I'm going to encourage you to use. So a folder will basically give you one of these little blue symbols and everything outlined inside it. So as we are going to be using audio samples, tick audio files. This means that anything that you import into the project will be saved into the project folder. The second one that I would encourage you to tick for now is EXS instruments and samples. So EXS is Logic's sampler. If we start to create our own sampled instruments using EXS, then we want to save all that information into the project. Hit save. Project saved, and there is our very basic overview of what we have in front of us.